that. I've answered this question actually already the last few days a bunch. I always get two questions when I tell people where I am. First, what is Nutranext? So Nutranext is a supplements parent company. Underneath it, we have 6 different consumer-facing brands. It was acquired by Clorox in late 2018, and essentially offering multivitamins, mineral supplements for kind of all demographics. The second question is, what is a Bleach company doing with supplements in the wellness space? So I think what people didn't know, I didn't know, is that the Clorox company is like a Procter & Gamble, like a Unilever. There's a bunch of consumer-facing brands underneath it. So yes, of course, cleaning, the namesake product, Glad trash bags are all underneath it. But there's also brands like Kingsford Charcoal, and I think really interestingly, other brands that lend themselves well to direct-to-consumer. Brita water filters, and then Burt's Bees has actually been under the Clorox umbrella for the last 7 years. And so it's not entirely new for Clorox to move into this space. But again, now with Nutranext DTC, we have a lot more of that. And the thinking was really, how do we start to build that relationship? So with CPGs, a lot of the challenge is that it's been the data and the relationship is all controlled by the retailer. And so they're not able to have that. And so there's a goal to get closer. And of course, direct-to-consumer online digital channels is the best way, arguably, to do that. And you see that in the space. So Unilever, through acquiring large D2C brands like Dollar Shave Club, Ollie Vitamins, and then on the flip side, Procter & Gamble with their venture studio, almost having kind of a startup innovation lab and incubation underneath it. Clorox has done it a little bit differently through Nutranext, establishing a direct-to-consumer center of excellence. We are focusing on supplements now, but then the charter is 1, to launch new brands, 2, to reinvent the e-com experiences of the existing retail brands, and then 3, to play kind of a consultative role on other more traditional pieces of Clorox of how can they get closer to the data, how can they do more testing given our background. And so in 2019, Clorox started bringing in new people. So my general manager came from Boxed, came from Plated, head of data science analytics, Jet, product brand list, Ashley. And so we're basically all startup people coming in to kind of lead this new initiative underneath Clorox. And so part of it is bringing in new thinking. On the other hand, actually, we also have people who have been in the vitamins, minerals space for 20, 25 years, and so they know all of the key suppliers. They have the relationship, they know the industry, and so it's kind of a nice marriage of the two of those things. And so, to illustrate a little bit about how we're different, underneath Clorox, there actually is no product management function, and so the website has always been a little bit more of a content hub for a brand marketing campaign and very little focus on transactions and how do you optimize that experience towards checkout. On the other side, too, there's no growth marketing function. Lots of depth in brand marketing, but not so much in performance marketing or having in-house media teams start to control that and think about it rather than having agencies run that media. And so that's kind of what we're bringing in that's different. So in October, we launched this new brand objective, and it's basically a supplements brand geared towards a Gen X audience. So Gen X, we call them kind of the sandwich generation. They're taking care of their kids, they're working, and then they have their elderly parents that they're also taking care of. And so we're launching a brand that is much more, online first, digitally native, to cater to them and offer targeted solutions. And so this was the objective. It was launched, soup to nuts actually built from the ground up. And so we have a custom e-com stack, not on a Shopify or a BigCommerce, Magento, any of those platforms. One of the big reasons is that from the get-go, we knew that data would be really foundational for us. And so by doing it this way, we also implemented clean event tracking and data governance. So Segment is our foundation for event tracking. We use it to port data back and forth to our media partners or anyone that we want to integrate. And then we also ingest all of that data back into our BI system through Snowflake. And so that's how we've kind of structured that there. And the other piece of it, with launching, with CPGs, they're much more, they think retail, they think store shelf first. When we, even in early conversations, and as part of Objective, we had the chance to choose the product SKUs, the brand name, the logo, and every element of it. And the thread that ran through all of it was, being mobile first, being digitally native, and making sure that this is something that could be interesting on someone's social media feed, that we knew that the goal would be we have to be able to stop the feed somehow if we're going to get that interest and be able to grow the brand over the long term. That said, a lot of it is kind of open for testing. We know that everything from pricing to the products, with e-com, you can throw something up for a little while. If it's not working, pull it down. Very, very different from the CPG retail world, where essentially you have one chance to launch a product line, and you pay all the sliding fees, get it out there. If it doesn't work, you're kind of dead in the water, I guess, and which is why there's a lot of time spent on the research and getting it out there. And so one of the things that we're bringing into Clorox is this shift in mentality. Rather than so much of the front-end research, so much of the front-end prep, it's just let's get something live out there, a minimum viable product, an MVP, and be agile. And so the right way, for us is it should be uncomfortable. We should feel like there's a lot of things out there that we don't like, that we want to change, but let the data guide our decisions, let the consumer feedback guide our decisions. And so I think this idea of perfect is the enemy of good is very much how we approach the launch. And what are we actually focusing on? Yes, there's the Objective website, but that can change. We might even change the brand name. Really all of that could go away. What we're really building is that underlying framework. What's the structure, and making sure that it's scalable, and we're taking these data and insights that could then translate across all of the different brands underneath the Nutranext portfolio. And so where you see that difference is that speed to market. So Objective, from choosing the brand name, logo, product SKUs, to actually having that e-commerce site out there mid-October, 4 months. In the Clorox world, not even a new brand, right? A line extension that you're going to launch into stores, that's minimum 9 months, oftentimes over 12 months. And that's where you really see that difference. To be able to do that, of course, is knowing that, like I said earlier, it's not perfect. And so this idea of there are no sacred cows, everything can change. We expect to change a whole lot of it along the way. But the key is really to get that data. And so looking at, sure, the quantitative data, how are people engaging with ads, how are people engaging through the site, but then also qualitative data, consumer surveys, getting out there, talking to people, getting our customer care, what are they hearing out there? So all of this kind of hoovering it in, so to say, and kind of figuring out, what's working, what's not working, but trying to not have that bias of here are things that have to be. The idea of we have to do it because this is the way we've always done it just doesn't fly at all. The other piece of it is kind of bridging brand and performance. And so I think especially with supplements, it's something that you're actually ingesting into your bodies. Oftentimes people are buying these products for themselves, for partners, for their kids. And so there's a high degree of trust that has to be established. And I understand that that doesn't often happen as the first time I land on the site, I'm going to purchase something and then just start taking this on a daily, right? So how do we seed that conversation by providing the education and the tools and looking at things, from more of a measurement and attribution side, a longer lead time, and knowing that we're going to have multiple touch points in there. It's not like buying a pair of shoes. It's either I like the shoes or I don't like it. It's the right price point. It's not. There's a lot more of Does this work with medications that I'm taking? You know, maybe I'm trying one supplements brand, I want to switch to this other one. Like, you know, there's a lot more, in a way, uncertainty, but also I think once you build the trust, there's a lot of lock-in that way. And so this idea of bridging brand and performance, I'm a big believer in not having kind of separate silos between teams. So I've actively brought together in, you know, all of my past roles of those teams, those media budgets. At the same time at launch, rather than just starting at kind of the bottom of the funnel, the most efficient transactional channels, and then exhausting it, and then starting to move upper funnel and diversify, I'm starting the other way where I'm launching full funnel from the beginning because I know that I need to get that education out there. I am trying to build a brand. I'm trying to build it responsibly through performance channels, but at the end of the day, it's all about that creative storytelling and creating that relationship, giving users a reason for, you know, engaging with us. And so, you know, very tactically, it's also looking at if we're going to create assets or gain assets for influencers, for example, where they have stories and they have posts for us, more from like the PR side, then I'm also taking those through a partner that allows us to white label or to white list and actually, you know, changing some of the posts, maybe putting the discount code farther up, putting the call to action farther up, and that becomes the social paid ads content that we then promote out. Same thing with media partnerships, finding ways that we can leverage those and turn them into ads or even have them create assets for us, you know, if it's a Condé Nast or a Well & Good that has that brand, to help them kind of give credence to this as a new brand for us. And so that's, for me, like that's what brand building a holistic strategy that merges brand and performance means. And then the other piece is, of course, right, the data. You know, how do you measure, how do you attribute, and then, you know, how do you do budget allocation? And so I think for every channel, we try to measure anything that's related to direct response. Something like DRTV, you know, that might just be site visits or brand search keyword lists versus something that is, you know, an actual click-through. Then on the other side, I'm also trying to get insights into how is this impacting brand affinity or how is this lifting the brand. So it could be things like reach and impression metrics to start with, but then also using like brand sentiment surveys and the how did you hear about us, kind of triangulate how all of these different channels are playing together. And then at the same time, very much focused holistically at the cohort level. So, you know, how many users are we gaining, new and repeat rates, what's the churn rate, and ultimately getting to, you know, what's that lifetime value to customer acquisition cost, so the LTV to CAC, and that's kind of how we measure a lot of the media. But it might not be, you know, always channel-specific accurate because there's a lot of overlap. What I am deliberately trying to do is create this surround sound for consumers, which means that lots of channels are talking to the same people, and I want that to be consistent messaging, and so that does make an attribution challenge, but it's something that, for me and for launching a brand, I believe that it's worth it, I guess, in the way, and so really, you know, default more to kind of that top line. Are we growing revenue at the top line or not? And then, of course, partnering with our data science team with predictive modeling to understand what are the signals so that we can provide that, you know, seamless customer experience that if someone come back to the site, can we start making product recommendations that are tailored to them and, you know, what supplements might help them. And same thing with, you know, maybe it's different promotions, different messaging. So that's kind of how we're looking at it, also tying down to the site and the products side. And then, you know, I think no surprise by now, that's the whole idea of moving fast, failing fast, but then also failing forward is really key to how we work. And so, you know, this testing also doesn't inform just media channels, but also what's our actual products that we're offering, the pricing, and, you know, really helping to enhance that audience persona. The audience persona piece is one that's, I'd say, like very different from how CPGs go after it, where they're absorbing a lot of research, internal and third party, have very defined personas, and then operate media against those. I think on our side, we kind of have a looser definition, I would say, and then as we run, we start to refine, okay, this is working, this is not working, in ingesting any kind of audience insights from the media companies that they're able to provide on the back end and starting to use that to kind of hone that down. And then running lots of different pilot programs. So we're very, very open to testing, but I want it to be small scale. And also, I don't want to spend a lot of effort on making sure that it's perfect that first time around. What I'm really going for is there sign of life here? And if there is, then following on with another campaign, the future months or quarters, where we really kind of flesh that out and build, maybe bring in more of that creative team and making sure that everything looks and feels exactly how we want it. But at that pilot stage, I'm just interested in like churning through as many different types of channels, as different messages as possible. And that's where actually I lean on not having just full in-house control. Some direct-to-consumer brands are very much on the scale of do everything in-house. I'm a little bit more 50-50 where I think in-house teams absolutely control the strategy, are working very closely with our partners, making sure that we're looking at all of the data and really tying that together to tell kind of a cross-channel story. But utilizing best-in-class kind of nimble agencies, consultants to help us be able to kind of not worry about, call it some of the more foundational channels, so that the in-house team can then be going out there talking to new partners and really figuring out what are these like bigger integrations that we can do. What it means actually though for our best partners is they work as an extension of our team. And so they're in our Slack channels. The ones that we prefer, the response times are something like 2 hours typically. And so we're like going back and forth all the time. Meetings are more about like working sessions where, yes, sure, bring some data and some reports, but I would love it when we're answering questions on the fly, flipping between the platform and the data side, rather than a deck that has maybe taken a week, 2 weeks to create and then kind of like lobbed over to us as the client. And so that, I think, part of that enables us to be able to do more as a team and to have this, this web that supports us as a team. And then, of course, looking at incrementality and doing incrementality testing. And so, some different forms of that are geo holdouts, so we'll run different media mixes across different parts of the country. And then also just looking at kind of impression level, which things seem to be driving lift versus others. And so, of course, there's a lot of data behind it. I think one of the things, though, that I really believe is that there's, you can measure everything. You can look at data. There's always more data, but at the heart of it, marketing is this blend of art and science. And in this spirit of trying to test through things, trying to build a brand, really trying to build a playbook of what works, I don't want marketing precision and accuracy to become the blocker for us to be able to, one, to try new things, or two, to provide that seamless customer experience. And so, if it makes more sense for a consumer to say, they get the same promotion, the same promo code and everything, and like every channel is talking about it, does that make my channel measurement a little bit more complicated? Yes, and so be it, right? On the other hand, if we have these tests out there and it doesn't look like they're getting closer to statistical significance, like move on. And so I don't want things to stall and want us to keep moving and iterating. And I think the channels that really are interesting and worth the effort are the ones that show that pop and show that lift, rather than the ones that you're just kind of like waiting forever to see like, okay, is that actually doing something? And of course, I like my data. I started my career in search marketing. I've set up multiple multi-touch attribution systems, but I think this idea, especially in today's world where it's getting harder to have that transparency with GDPR, with IDP, and all of that, I think us as marketers, we really what we are offering is looking at the data, but layering on that experience and also an element of like faith and like gut sense. And so that is kind of how we're looking at our campaigns, how I am building my team is kind of people who are gaining more experience so that there's a better and better kind of gut compass for which campaigns will work and which one. And I think finally, of course, we do operate somewhat independently on our day-to-day, and so able to make these decisions, able to move quickly. But abstracting a little bit higher up, there's the strengths that being part of a traditional CPG really helped us to do. So I think the direct-to-consumer benefits are really obvious to all of us, right? Having that customer relationship, getting that first-party transactional data, and then this idea of rapid iteration. Rapid iteration, as it translates to a broader CPG, might not be running direct-to-consumer campaigns, because that revenue will always be kind of a low percentage of total. But how can we use digital and this idea of testing to look at claims, to look at brand positioning, to refine that audience persona in a way that gives the early read that we could then give to Clorox, big brand and media agency that they can then build out into something bigger. And so that's kind of how we're thinking about it. On the flip side, with being part of a CPG company, we're able to make these like long-term decisions about what's the right infrastructure, what's the right MarTech stack. Startups, oftentimes, you're not able to do that because you don't have that revenue in hand yet, where we are basically choosing what is the scalable solution and what are the partners we want to work with in the long term, and setting that up from the get-go. And then, of course, being able to get into retail stores. Now you see the Glossiers and the Warby Parkers, that are popping up different retail presences. That's traditionally kind of hard for a DTC brand to kind of figure out how to do it. At the point for us as a supplements company that we are ready to move into retail, we have so many resources in-house within Clorox that can help us figure out how to get there, and they have that relationship. And so I think that will help us accelerate growth as a D2C brand. And then, of course, the R&D innovation, not just like products and formulation, but Clorox, for example, has put out a 2025 sustainability pledge to be 100% recyclable, compostable, renewable, and so that will, those innovations will flow down to us, and today's consumer, especially as we move into the younger demographics, the millennials, care very much about that transparency into the supply chain, whether it's sustainable, and so that will help us just to have another lever even to kind of grow the brand. And so, I'm really optimistic at this. I would say we're still early stages, right? This team has come together this year. We're launching a new brand. There's a lot more work and more things we're going to get wrong on the objective brand before we get it right. But I'm really optimistic at kind of the way that we can bring in this like rapid iteration, this testing framework, and then also the CPG can bring in their clout, their resources to help and to enhance this. And so I'm personally, obviously, really optimistic for this future, or I wouldn't have joined. But I think it's also really interesting to see what is this. How will these traditional CPGs companies start to change to be a little bit more nimble and less siloed in structure as they historically have been? And hopefully with that, getting more data, be able to build that stronger customer relationship.
Okay, great. Thank you, Vivian. Does anyone have any questions for Vivian? Just one quick one. I'm coming from such a legacy brand. You talked about the advantages and the resources that you can use from Clorox. For startups who maybe don't necessarily have that, what would be that one thing, you've been part of a lot of startups, what would be that one thing to be able to do to move forward without having those kind of resources and that kind of backing financially?
I mean, I think a lot of it is partnering. So finding other similar, call it like DTC brands or startup brands to kind of partner together to kind of get that larger clout. I think a lot of it also, the costs that are coming down on doing a lot of things, which is I think why you see the proliferation actually of DTC brands, is that it's easier to go to market without having millions of dollars like a consumer packaged goods company does.
So, but maybe partnerships. Oh, we have one over here.
Yeah. Good morning, Vivian. So, question. This is Jeff Alderman from Ad Media. So, on the direct-to-consumer side as well, it also allows you to create more of a recurring revenue model, right? Than a retail. Just curious if you can kind of share any kind of thoughts around that recurring retail model, recurring revenue for what you're seeing, and if that varies across any product lines.
Yeah, I'd say we're still a little bit early days on it, right? Like I came from Play-Doh, which was subscription meal kits, and so that was like very much ongoing recurring revenue. I think that's the undertone of why first-party data is becoming so important for these CPG companies. So even if it's driving people in store, but be able to have that consistent email reminder or social reminder to say like, hey, we have a new product line, go stock up on this, try something like that. I think something like supplements, building in a subscription model actually is on our roadmap to have it be more of kind of this curated kit or box or something like that. That is the goal for sure because it allows us to do a little bit more things with some more security.
Rob from Purple. How do you feel your level of support is for the creative needs? As you're launching a company, I know a lot of startups have struggles there. Do you feel like living within that CPG environment gives you access to more creative resources?
Yeah. Creative is definitely probably the hardest thing, the biggest pain point. So it's a double-edged sword being part of kind of these CPGs on figuring out whether I want them in creative. So yes, Clorox has Electros, basically like an in-house creative agency. But one that they don't come from a digitally native kind of background. So they've traditionally created print or things that are driving more towards content. And then two, they're not nearly as nimble. And so I would rather use, some of our creative partners are the same as the ones that live in our Slack channels we're just like constantly iterating. And so that's actually something I continue to go blend of in-house and outside, but independent of Clorox to do for creative right now.